Hi, it's Leela, the proud poly kinky queer slut. Today's question is it ethical to have kids in a polyamorous relationship? And thank you to the real life person who asked this and as a comment on my YouTube channel. I appreciate it very much. I really appreciate getting questions that might be hard questions. So please ask me anything, and I mean anything. I want any question you have. So let's jump into it. So the ethics of bringing kids into a polyamorous relationship. So, there's an idea at the root of this question that it is more ethical to have kids in a monogamous, like co-parent situation than in any other situation. I want to say that I don't agree with that view of ethics. So I don't agree that it's the most ethical thing to have one mom, one dad raising kids. I think that the important thing is having loving parental figures taking care of those children, having people that the kids can look to as role models who are there all the time, who are consistent, loving support. That is the important thing. And I think that any parenting is ethical if it meets those parameters. So let's talk about configurations that happen in monogamous living, in monogamous culture, that all are ethical by that standard. So you've got people who were monogamously married and got divorced and then may remarry. And so step parent situations, blended family situations, or two single parents sharing custody of children situations. You've got people who never chose to marry the spouse or the father or mother of their child. So you've got people who are raising kids as single parents doing it by themselves. You've got people who never chose to get married or be together, but are sharing custody of kids. While being single and dating. You've also got situations where the person raising the kid is an adoptive parent or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or things like that. All of these things happen. And in my view, all of these things are ethical ways of raising kids, as is polyamorous relationship. So, and again, that's because for me, ethics is are you hurting anybody? Are you doing anybody harm? Are you being harmful to other people? And if you're not being harmful to other people, then I think that's ethical. Ethics is something we all define differently, for sure. But I would ask folks to just question the idea of what is ethics to you and where does that come from. But yeah, for me, it's very much ethical. Let's get into what's good for the kids. Let's get into some of the elements and what's good for kids, because I do think that there is an important question that's like really related to this about what's good for kids. How do you be a good parent? And what is what is really healthy for kids? And in my view, I think stable, consistent parents are what's best for kids. I think kids can survive and can thrive with big changes in their life structure, but I do think that having those stable parents, those people who are ride or die for them, who are there for them in and out, who are present, I think that's the key to being a good parent. And I would just postulate that in a poly relationship structure, especially if you're bringing kids into that poly relationship structure as babies, or if you're bringing people in when the kids are younger in age, you're creating a situation where you can have more people who form that stable attachment to those kids and more resiliency in that. Also, less of a strain on the parents. I can tell you that I was, raising two kids with a monogamous spouse with little kids, both in diapers at the same time. And it was beautiful and wonderful, but it was also one of the hardest points in my life. Working more than full time, raising two kids with spouse working full time. It would have been very, very helpful to have more people involved in that situation and more people providing that loving support. And I think that is an advantage of poly relationships, that you can have a bigger community of parents for the children, and more attention for the kids, more attention to their needs, and an easier time making sure the kids needs get met while also making sure the parents' needs get met. So yeah, I think that can be one big advantage of poly relationships. Frankly, as I've seen like some positive aspects of divorced parents who've remarried and having some of that, like just more people in the mix. When it comes to dating, poly parents are not the only parents who date. There are a lot of parents who are in monogamous world who date. So divorced parents and again single parents or any parent who is wanting to see other people. So a lot of monogamous parents date. In monogamous like relationship schemes, the traditional way it goes is you date for a while, and then if the person dating has a kid, you're dating for a while looking for eventually that person to be somebody you marry who becomes a co-parent or step-parent. That is not the case in a lot of poly relationships, and it's certainly not the case in my poly relationships. So there's less pressure and less concern about when I introduce my kids to people I'm dating because that person's not a prospective additional parent. Sometimes poly people are dating and that is a prospective additional parent. And I would just caution anybody who's looking at bringing in prospective additional parents that, of course, it really matters how close our kids get to other people that come into our lives. And that's something that an ethical, responsible parent has to take into consideration. Is introducing this person into my child's life something that's going to be good for my kid? And as a poly parent, we have to make that judgment in the same way that any monogamous parent does, who's in the dating world. So yeah, that's really the same either way, but a good thing to caution. Finally, all right, let's get to the sex. Every time this question comes up in the real world, like out when I'm having coffee with somebody and people have follow-up questions, there's always the question of, but do you have sex in the house with your kids there? Okay, so I have been married for 19 plus years. The person I have had sex with in the house with my kids present the very most, like exponentially more than anybody else, is my spouse, especially while we were monogamous. Because if you are a parent and you have a sex life, if you don't let your sex life disappear when you have kids, and I think most parents don't let their sex life just evaporate when they have kids. Certainly not the first one, or we wouldn't have second and third kids. Most of us have sex while our children are in their house, and it's something we have to navigate, and it's weird, and it's got this all the things. Like, I remember vividly the years of like the baby monitor being set up, ultra sensitive mode with next to the kids upstairs in their room, so that I would hear it and be able to stop whatever was going on in the bedroom, and like if one of the kids started crying or needed us to go run and check on them. At this point, I'm just really glad we're past those years. And frankly, like, it was challenging having sex with kids in the house. It's still less comfortable having sex in a house with a lot of other people in it, where you have to be cautious about volume and all of those things. For that reason, most of the time when I'm dating, I'm finding places to have that kind of physical intimacy with people, either at their homes or if they live alone or in other places. But yeah, I absolutely have had romantic boyfriends over to stay the night and spend the night in my room and had quiet sex with them in ways that were not disturbing to anybody in the house. And frankly, that nobody else in the house asked about or even knew about because it was none of their business. And what they assume is what they assume. But, certainly, of course, my spouse knew what was going on. They're not stupid. And, but again, it was my private time with another partner. And that was between us. And certainly, it's like, while my romantic partner boyfriend was spending the night, my daughter knocked on the door and needed me. I put my robe on and went out and took care of the parenting, as a parent does when they're in that situation, regardless of whether that person that's in their bed is a friends with benefits, a boyfriend, or a longtime spouse. My kids so far, not bothered by this. They've consistently said it's really not a big deal to them. And I think that overall, having more people in the mix, having happier parents makes happier children. So doing what is authentic to you and what makes you happy, I think makes you a better parent. Especially if it allows you to show up more as your authentic, real self with your kids and spend more quality time with your kids. Because that's really what parenting is all about. It's about being there with your kids and having that good, solid relationship with your kids. So whatever relationship structure you've got, I think that that's really how you be an ethical parent, regardless of relationship structure. Is you show up and be a parent for your kids. So thank you very much for the question. Thank you for listening. This is Leela, the proud poly kinky queer slut. And remember, you can ask me anything.